Let's talk about naturalization and names. Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States at our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, and Washington, D.C. And even though those are the three places where we have our offices, we practice cases all over the country. And I just had an immigration interview, a naturalization case down at USCIS Houston, and it was a naturalization case involving a name change. So I wanted to talk to you about what I talked to my client about and some of the issues that arise when it comes to names and people getting their U.S. citizenship. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that people who come to the United States oftentimes come from places where the natural language is not English. And so they keep track of names differently. They may spell things differently. And phonetically, the English version of people's names is often unusual or different or not something that the U.S. government is used to. So what we see oftentimes is people having birth documents or marriage documents or identity documents that are slightly different than the name that they had at the time that they were born or that they were married. In other words, the documents don't always match exactly, and people get pretty freaked out about this. On the naturalization form itself, the N-400, it asks about other names used. I do not believe that you need to list every phonetic spelling of your name. If you use the same name and sometimes it's spelled with an E, sometimes it's spelled with an I, that's okay. You can go ahead and list all those names, but I think it's overkill. I don't think that it's necessary. I believe that USCIS is more concerned about people who sometimes call themselves Joe, sometimes call themselves Yusuf, and sometimes call themselves Frank. That's what they want to know about when they're talking about other names used. I do not think you need to get too far into the weeds. You don't need to be worried about a one-letter difference in your middle name or something like that. Now, another thing that happens a lot with names, in the Middle East especially, is that people often include their parents' name, their father's name, as their middle name, or over there they don't even have middle names. It's just your first name, your father's name, and then sometimes it's either even your grandfather's name or your great-grandfather's name. This client I had the other day, on some documents, actually has his name, his father's name, his father's father's name, and his father's grandfather's name all in one line of his name. So the U.S. immigration system isn't really set up for that. They're more likely going to treat it as first name, middle name, last name. So a lot of times people's identity documents don't necessarily match the green card that they received. Somebody along the way, whether it was the client or USCIS, just decided to assign them certain names. One is their first, one is their middle, one is their last. Even though their last one might be their tribal name, might be their grandfather's name, you never really know. So you'll find that over time, your immigration name usage gets a little bit convoluted and a little bit messy. Your best chance to clean that up is in the naturalization process. I want to encourage you not to change your name before you naturalize. If you start the immigration process, that is by getting a conditional green card and then a 10-year green card and then applying for citizenship, I believe you're going to be best suited to keep your name the same all the way up until you become a U.S. citizen. When you become a U.S. citizen, you have the free chance to change your name. It doesn't cost anything. You don't have to go to court. You just do it as part of the naturalization process. That's also the time to really change it fundamentally from one name to another. And I always laugh to myself. I had a client once from the northern part of Iraq, and he decided that he wanted to change his name to John Connor. And the officer was sort of perplexed. Why in the world would you change your name to John Connor? Because he had an Arab name. And the officer was very confused until he found out that the guy was a big fan of the Terminator. So he wanted to call himself John Connor, like one of the characters in the Terminator. But for most people, their name changes are much less dramatic, much more subtle. And they do involve just maybe cutting off some of the names if there have been multiple names, or cleaning up the spelling, or maybe making it easier to pronounce or say. Now, when you change your name, this can have lots of other consequences that you might not know about. So you need to think long and hard about changing your name. Oftentimes, you've built up a credit history in the United States under one name, and if you change it during naturalization, that can cause a problem. Another thing that can cause a problem with a name change during the naturalization process is that, believe it or not, USCIS has to conduct a background check on the new name. So in order for you to get your actual interview, they will have conducted background checks on all the names that you've listed on your N-400. But if you are proposing to change your name, one last thing that they need to do before they naturalize you is to do a background check on that name, which of course isn't anybody because no one's ever used that name with your biographic information. So these are the kinds of things that you need to think about when you're talking about changing your name. You're going to add time to the processing of your naturalization case, and most likely you're going to have to go see a federal judge because only the federal judge can order a name change. You can't have an administrative naturalization and change your name. So these are all the kinds of things that we talk to our clients about. These are the kinds of things we want you to think about before changing your name, either while going through the naturalization process or long before that when you still have your green card. These are all the concerns that we have, the issues we raise, and the things that you need to think about. If you're thinking about going through the naturalization process and you would like my law firm to help you, feel free to give us a call at 314-961-8200. If you're looking for free information, we have tons of it. So we have hundreds and hundreds of YouTube videos where I'm talking about immigration issues just like this one. We have our Immigration Answers live show where a couple times a week I'm going live on YouTube and on Facebook answering as many of your immigration law related questions as I can. And then also we have our Immigrant Home Facebook group, which you are free to join. We have thousands of members in there, and people are talking about processing times, their cases, sort of the headache of going through immigration or dealing with the State Department. And we'd love to have you join us there. Just look for Immigrant Home in Facebook. That's it for now. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.